Hi, everybody, and welcome to Video Content Chat. I am Maureen Jann, the founder of SuperDeluxe Marketing, a company that helps you find your most profitable customers, make a plan to get to them, and help you execute. I am here with the lovely and fabulous Erika Heald. Erika, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Erika, and I run a consulting firm in San Francisco working with startups on putting together their content marketing strategies and creating content that builds engagement with their ideal customers.
Fantastic. Well, I'm excited. You came up with this topic today, and I am really jazzed about it because it's a perfect time of year. People are graduating all over the place, college, high school, whole nine yards, and that's never an easy time. It's always a little scary. You're like, what's next? How do I do it? Yada, yada, yada. And so I love the idea of, so today we're going to talk about how, what things you should consider and the path we took to get to our marketing careers. So how do you get out there? How do you learn about the job? How do you avoid pitfalls that the rest of us have already made? This is a great topic.
Awesome. Well, I'll kick off.
Okay.
My background was originally journalism. So that's, how I ended up in content marketing is I came in through journalism, and journalism is a fantastic hobby and a really terrible way to make a living these days. And even back when I graduated from school, a few years ago, that was still the case. So for me, one of the things that was really important is even though my goal was to be a magazine journalist, I didn't limit my initial job search just to magazines. I ended up, to roles of being a journalist because I understood that it's such a competitive market and that realistically, you need to be able to pay the rent. So for me, my first job out of college was not as a journalist or as a marketer. It was as an office manager for a small publication magazine in their advertising office. And then, of course, what I did, as any smart freelancer would do, I started pitching them ideas for freelance articles. And in fact, I ended up turning that office manager job into a staff writing job within about a year. So it was it's one of those things where it's more important that you get out there and you find a company that is doing something that you're interested in and you take a job and you learn the business. It's, to me, the first thing is taking that first step and not being so hung up on, but I want to have a marketing assistant job because I want to be a marketer.
Yep. And it's funny that you say that because my experience is actually very similar to that. I started out wanting to be a graphic designer. And it turns out that everybody's the boss of you when you're a graphic designer unless you are a magical unicorn. And I was not a magical unicorn. I was a fine designer, but it wasn't good enough to be able to call my own shots. But I really like being in charge. And I couldn't find a job when I moved to Seattle. So I ended up being an admin. And then I went from admin to marketing manager to marketing director to having an agency. But in the meantime, in those corporate jobs, what I found is that I wasn't growing and learning as fast as I wanted to. And so the best thing that I could do was always have a side hustle so that I could learn and grow and push my skills. Because let's be honest, like corporate jobs don't really stretch you or let you stretch as much as you might like. So I had the pleasure of working for a lot of amazing people who gave me as much room as they could, but it just wasn't fast enough for me. And especially the younger I was and the more I wanted to learn, I was so hungry. So I've been everything from the owner of a clothing store to a partner in a business that made unexpected wedding invitation themed invitations. And then, always been contract graphic design and web design so that I could keep my skills up. So yeah, that's my skills.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the side hustle because I've always had one or three of them, In fact, really, that's how I paid off my student loans within 3 years of graduating, as I was always doing freelance gigs or I'd have a full-time job and a 10-hour-a-week job. Mm-hmm. And the thing that was, always the key was something I wanted to learn. So when online stuff started really being where the future of journalism was for me, I got a part-time gig with our local alternative weekly, helping them with that transition where they're taking the content that was being published in the print paper and putting it online and optimizing it for the web. So that was, one of my first official side hustles. And I've always had one. I mean, even now, like it cracks me up when people ask, oh, well, where do you write? And my answer is, well, there's my primary blog, and then there's my gluten-free baking blog, and then I also have my career coaching blog. And people are just, how do you have time for all of this?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, well, how I have to have time for it, because that's how I keep learning and growing. Because to your point, frequently when you're in a corporate job, you don't have that. You eventually hit the wall. And, that's why I actually left my last Fortune 500 job. They're amazing people. I always had a different job to do, but eventually I wasn't going to be able to learn what I needed to learn to feel like I was going to continue to be relevant in an increasingly digital marketplace. And so that's when I made the jump to working for startups and never looked back.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue into our next part, where we're going to talk about the importance of, what would you recommend, a new graduate do if you were wanting to work in the marketing industry? And that's like one of the number one pieces of advice I give people is have a side hustle, own your own business, know what it means from every angle. So that way you can experiment, you can try new things, you can test things that you've always wanted to try that your day job will never let you touch. Because the challenge that I think a lot of students run into is that how do you get experience when you have no experience, right? And so the best way to do that is just make your own experience, like be your own boss, be your own mentor, choose things that are challenging, go above and beyond,
Totally. And, when I see a candidate come in who maybe doesn't have, that right fit with the job experience, but they've either been doing a bunch of volunteer work that's relevant, or they've had their own business or blog, showing that they have been able to take the initiative, that they have a passion for lifelong learning, that they just really love what they do. That goes really far for me, because, having worked at some really big companies that people all want to get a foot in the door, I've sat in interviews where people have literally told me that this job was just going to be a stepping stone to get to somewhere else in the company, or that, they're not very interested in this kind of work or job, but, they need to pay their bills. Horrible, right? But that's stuff that really happens. And the way you're going to stand out as a brand new fresh college graduate is by showing that you're so passionate about what you're doing, that you're doing it even when it's not your day job.
Yep. The other thing that I think was a really big deal for me was that it took me a really long time to make a living wage as a marketer who focuses on pictures and words. And I feel like if I could go back and do something different, what I would do is have a parallel life where I focused on data and tools that process data, so that I could use that to create context to make me better at the words and the pictures. And so what I mean by that is I think that when it comes to words and pictures, it takes practice, and it requires context, which is hard to get when you're early in your career. And as you progress, you've earned the skill, and you've earned the experience, and you've earned the accolades, but it takes that time and those layers of experiences to help get you where you need to be excellent at making pictures and at making, at writing. And so when you deal with, if you want to, in a perfect world, if you were to parallel park those two concepts, maybe figure out like a tool that's data driven, that's highly in demand, like say one of the marketing automation systems, and also pursue that career in the softer side of marketing, you'll probably shoot up quicker from a salary perspective.
Completely agree. And I know a lot of my clients spend a lot of money on consultants for Marketo, for instance.
Yeah.
So if you spend the time and you learn a system like that, it can be worth it to take a job that, you're going to learn that inside and out, because you're going to be able to put that to use in every job that you have moving forward.
Yep.
Those boring statistics classes you took in college, you're going to use that all the time, and you're going to be so glad you paid attention.
And I mean, all that stuff informs the content we're writing anyway, right? I mean, it's basically the fuel, and the more analytics based and the more proven statistics based your content is, oftentimes you get more attention for those. So I feel like they'll feed each other, and you end up with like this lifelong skill that will serve you no matter what. I had somebody working for me who had only learned the marketing automation system she self-trained herself on. And within a year, she had moved on to a significantly higher salary and now can kind of pick her job. So it's worth the time.
Totally agreed. And if you're sitting there watching this thinking, gosh, I need to like brush up on some of my skills and I don't really know where to start, you know, we actually just had our summer reading challenge kickoff in Content Chat a couple weeks ago. And if you head over to the blog, there's a fantastic roundup of all the different kinds of courses, podcasts, ebooks, all sorts of great resources that our community has identified as being really helpful in their careers. So that'd be a great place to start.
That's fantastic. That was a great tweet chat. I enjoyed it. I learned a ton. Awesome. Well, I think that wraps it up for today. Thanks for hanging out with me and talking about our origin story, all the comic books.
Love it.
All right, great. Well, we'll see you next week. Bye.